Ex-Caves GM thinks Kyrie Irving showed courage with trade request. It is unclear how hard the Cavaliers are trying to acquiesce to Kyrie Irving's trade request, but tea leaf readers saw a sign Monday that the team was inclined to keep its star point guard. Cleveland's former general manager, though, said he thought Irving would get dealt, and he described the player's request as an act of courage. Appearing on ESPN's The Jump on Monday, David Griffin, who unexpectedly parted ways with the Cavs in June, was asked about former Cleveland guard Ron Harper's comments. Harper recently said, via the Akron Beacon-Journal, that Irving's desire to be traded away from LeBron James and company was born of youth and ignorance, adding, "When the inmates are in charge, nothing but bad things can happen, right? I think what Ron was saying is really unfair to Kyrie," Griffin told co-hosts Amin Al-Hassan and Dave McMenamin. "This is a guy who handled the situation exactly like he was supposed to. He went to owner Dan Gilbert privately, told him that he thought he would be happier somewhere else. The absolute worst thing this guy could have done was pretend to be all in and sink the ship from within. Most guys don't have the courage to do what he did. That's not youth and ignorance. That's a little bit more courage than people give him credit for." Irving's camp is reportedly of the opinion that James himself leaked the news of the trade request, possibly to lower the guard's value and make it harder for the Cavs to get a worthwhile offer. At the same time, James has been widely rumored to be interested in leaving the Cavs after opting out of his contract in 2018, and Irving's mindset could be shaped by a preference to not be subsequently stuck with an asset-poor team built for the strengths of a superstar forward no longer around. "I think Kyrie is going to end up getting traded," Griffin said on ESPN. If that's true, then a video the Cavs released Monday that showed off their new uniforms might be the last time we see the name Irving on the back of one. Noting that Irving signed a contract extension with the Cavs before James returned to the team in 2014, Griffin said the guard was sold a totally different situation than he's actually in, and he worked very well in. He won a championship in, and I see this as him looking for a fit for himself to take the next step in his career. LeBron casts a very large shadow over an organization, and most of it is really positive, Griffin added. "You know you're expected to win a championship, by way of example, but what that doesn't always allow is for a player like Kyrie to test his boundaries a little bit and see how good he can really be." Interestingly, Griffin implied that Irving had named the Celtics as one of his preferred trade destinations, whereas previous reporting had claimed the list included the Spurs, to whom Griffin also referred, Knicks, Heat and Timberwolves. A New Jersey native, Irving was reported to very badly want to join New York, but the two sides had not been able to come to terms, and the Knicks are also trying to figure out what to do with their own disgruntled star, Carmelo Anthony. The Cavs don't have to trade Irving, who has 3 years left on his contract, including a player option for the final year. However, Griffin presumably knows more than most about the thinking in Cleveland's front office, and to hear him tell it, Irving is more likely than not going to be wearing another team's jersey this season. Government report finds drastic impact of climate change on U.S. Washington. The average temperature in the United States has risen rapidly and drastically since 1980, and recent decades have been the warmest of the past 1,500 years, according to a sweeping federal climate change report awaiting approval by the Trump administration. The draft report by scientists from 13 federal agencies, which has not yet been made public, concludes that Americans are feeling the effects of climate change right now. It directly contradicts claims by President Trump and members of his cabinet who say that the human contribution to climate change is uncertain, and that the ability to predict the effects is limited. Evidence for a changing climate abounds, from the top of the atmosphere to the depths of the oceans, a draft of the report states. A copy of it was obtained by the New York Times. The authors note that thousands of studies, conducted by tens of thousands of scientists, have documented climate changes on land and in the air. Many lines of evidence demonstrate that human activities, especially emissions of greenhouse, heat-trapping, gases, are primarily responsible for recent observed climate change, they wrote. The report was completed this year and is a special science section of the National Climate Assessment, which is congressionally mandated every 4 years. The National Academy of Sciences has signed off on the draft report, and the authors are awaiting permission from the Trump administration to release it. One government scientist who worked on the report, Catherine Hayhoe, a professor of political science at Texas Tech University, called the conclusions among the most comprehensive climate science reports to be published. Another scientist involved in the process, who spoke to the New York Times on the condition of anonymity, said he and others were concerned that it would be suppressed. The White House and the Environmental Protection Agency did not immediately return calls or respond to emails requesting comment on Monday night. The report concludes that even if humans immediately stopped emitting greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, the world would still feel at least an additional 0.50 degrees Fahrenheit, 0.30 degrees Celsius, of warming over the century compared with today. The projected actual rise, scientists say, will be as much as 2 degrees Celsius. A small difference in global temperatures can make a big difference in the climate. The difference between a rise in global temperatures of 1.5 degrees Celsius and one of 2 degrees Celsius, for example, could mean longer heat waves, more intense rainstorms and the faster disintegration of coral reefs. Among the more significant of the study's findings is that it is possible to attribute some extreme weather to climate change. The field known as attribution science has advanced rapidly in response to increasing risks from climate change. The EPA is one of 13 agencies that must approve the report by August 18. The agency's administrator, Scott Pruitt, has said he does not believe that carbon dioxide is a primary contributor to global warming. It's a fraught situation, said Michael Oppenheimer, a professor of geoscience and international affairs at Princeton University who was not involved in the study. This is the first case in which an analysis of climate change of the scope has come up in the Trump administration, and scientists will be watching very carefully to see how they handle it. Scientists say they fear that the Trump administration could change or suppress the report. But those who challenge scientific data on human-caused climate change say they are equally worried that the draft report, as well as the larger National Climate Assessment, will be publicly released. The National Climate Assessment seems to be on autopilot because of a lack of political direction, said Myron Ebel, a senior fellow at the Competitive Enterprise Institute. The report says significant advances have been made linking human influence to individual extreme weather events since the last National Climate Assessment was produced in 2014. Still, it notes, crucial uncertainties remain. It cites the European heat wave of 2003 and the record heat in Australia in 2013 as specific episodes where relatively strong evidence showed that a man-made factor contributed to the extreme weather. In the United States, the authors write, the heat wave that broiled Texas in 2011 was more complicated. That year was Texas' driest on record, and one study cited in the report said local weather variability and La Niña were the primary causes, with a relatively small warming contribution. Another study had concluded that climate change made extreme events 20 times more likely in Texas. Based on those and other conflicting studies, the federal draft concludes that there was a medium likelihood that climate change played a role in the Texas heat wave. But it avoids assessing other individual weather events for their link to climate change. Generally, the report described linking recent major droughts in the United States to human activity as complicated, saying that while many droughts have been long and severe, they have not been unprecedented in the Earth's hydrologic natural variation.